This is with regards to the freehold leasehold situation. And, I mean, it's been spoken about for so long, this idea of, indeed by Michael Gove, I remember when he was the Housing Secretary, about getting rid of leaseholds. Now, the Labour government, of course, was elected on a variety of issues, but I think this was certainly one of them. And Angela Rayner promised very early on, and her shadow ministers, to crack down on this and to get rid of leaseholds. But now I read that a group of landowners have begun this judicial review in the High Court to challenge the government's attempts to reform the freehold and leasehold system of property ownership. Harry Scoffin is housing campaigner, founder of Free Leaseholders. Thanks for joining us, Harry. Why do we need to get rid of leaseholds?
Form of financial servitude. Basically, you're forever compensating the landowner for living on his land, even though you as a leaseholder, the normal person, has paid a premium to buy that property. And the fact is, the rest of the world doesn't have leasehold. They all have forms of common hold, which basically means you own the flat outright, and then with your neighbours, you appoint a managing agent who looks after that building. And if they rip you off, you go in and appoint another one. So you don't have someone in BVI or Monaco or the Cayman Islands trying to extract endless amounts of money out of you. And if you don't pay up, try and take the property off you.
Do you think the government have been sort of dragging their heels on this issue, the new government I refer to?
Well, the thing is, as you said, it was a clear manifesto commitment to finally end the feudal leasehold system. And to be honest, a year in, there's been a lot of foot dragging. But obviously now we find out that there's this judicial review and the freeholders are suing. But the problem is that the government needs to literally show steel on this, because I think at the moment there's just a sense of political malaise. What is this country for? Who is the government fighting for? Is it fighting against a big corporate interests, offshore interests, or is it for the working people that they say? And I think the big question is that, are they going to let this drag on for years? Because governments can do two things at once. They can chew gum and walk at the same time. They can fight this judicial review, and then they can use the incredible majority that they've got and ram through new legislation in Parliament. They don't need to let this go all the way to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, because that will take years.
Yeah, of course, Gerald Ford, who was quoted as not being able to chew gum and walk at the same time. The rights of leaseholders, how can they be better strengthened in your view?
Well, to make it easy for people to buy out the freeholders, because you can have all the rights in the world about rights to transparency, rights to information, rights to challenge. But to be honest, people have got jobs, families, lives. They can't spend their time in and out of tribunal every year. And a few weeks ago, they rushed through a consultation on more rights to challenge, as if we're going to be serial litigators, and they lined up some cosy articles in the media. It was almost like client journalism. No one was actually holding them to account. Well, what happened to the pledge to end the leasehold system? And just today, we've heard from the minister at the Housing Select Committee, Matthew Pennycook, that the announcement that they put out in November, which was already a downgrade on what they said ahead of the election. Lisa Nandy famously said they would be bringing forward legislation the first 100 days, and then they U-turned on that. And then just after the election, still quite a good commitment, they said they'd move quickly in the King's speech. He's now said that they're not upholding that timetable. There's been a slip. And yet the rest of the media haven't picked up on it. So I'm so glad you're covering this story. It feels like there's a blackout on this. We're talking about some of the most powerful people in the country, say in the country, many of them are offshore. And the fact is, this is an entrenched privileged system of basically oppression. And it sounds crazy saying that. We're a first world country and all the rest of it, we have a democracy, but it's all about who owns the land in this country. And the sad thing is, the little people don't. If you buy a flat, you don't own the land, you don't even own the property. And I think the key thing is Labour going to prioritise this thing? Because whenever we get announcements, it's all puff pieces, it's all place media. You have to get it out of them dragging and screaming. That is not what we want to see from the government that have made this a manifesto commitment. We need the same sort of fight that we saw in Michael Gove. Poor guy, he was up against the government that probably didn't really back this agenda. Yet with Labour, it's in the manifesto. And also there's a warning for Labour. This was in the manifestos of other parties too. The Liberal Democrats, the Tories, if we believe them, but also Reform UK. So the fact is, if Labour don't do it, other parties will see the opportunity and go for it. I think that's the key thing. This judicial review, there's not a single leaseholder voice. So you've got the 7 freeholders and the government. I think that's a huge thing. Your listeners would be shocked to hear that they're crowing about their human rights to prop up a system that is looting people in their own homes. I think people would be shocked to hear that. We hear about ECHR with migrants, with terrorists, things like that. But the idea of rich people that are basically making money, easy money, off a system that everywhere else in the world doesn't have, or if they had it, they got rid of it. They want to use that as an excuse. I think that's so damning of our democracy right now, that they're allowed to reopen the debate when they lost it in Parliament. They lost it with the last government. They lost it in the general elections. I think that's so important, and we really support all of the reporting that you and your colleagues have done on LBC over the months and years.
Not that it justifies it, but I mean, the leasehold system, 'twas ever thus, wasn't it? I mean, it sort of dates back to the Middle Ages, the new system to the early 1900s. I mean,
exactly.
It's always been the case.
It goes to the Doomsday Book. But the fact is, these freeholders are crowing about their human rights. They actually only own a slither of value in our homes. So according to their own lobby group, the Residential Freehold Association, you can Google it on their website. It's all up there. It's kosher. They've said freeholders just own 2.5% in a block of flats. So leaseholders, you're getting out a mortgage on something, you put in the majority value. So actually all we need to do is buy out that 2.5%. So what we're worried about is the government are overcomplicating this. They're making it more complicated than it needs to be. And this idea of this technocratic legalism, you've heard about the rows about Lord Hermer, almost paralysing government decision-making. Anything that has any connection to the Human Rights Act, the ECHR, he says, oh, no, we don't want to take that risk. We don't want to open up judicial review. We've got to fight this. And actually, it's bizarre, but there is a parallel. The last time freeholders tried to take on elected government and, Parliament on this, they lost. It was the Duke of Westminster, the deceased one. It's his son now taking on this one, but they sued the Thatcher government. And it went all the way to Strasbourg. And Strasbourg actually found that said, actually, yes, you can remove these freeholders. You can let people compulsorily buy the freeholds because this is a democratic parliament. They've got a wide margin of appreciation. They can interfere in the public benefit. So it's just bizarre. All these years later, I'm 30. This is before I was born. They're trying to have the same old debate. I was at the High Court today. The judges did not look best pleased about it. Them crowing about human rights. What about our human rights? And I think you're right. It's always been there, but it's all about political will. We can put man on the moon. We can get rid of a fundamentally exploitative system that, it is about political will. A lot of the work's been done. Look at other countries. Ireland, 10 times ground rent. Bob's your uncle. We've bought these guys out. And I think that's the important thing at a time when people are asking, what is this government for? Is it for the big money interest or is it for the working people? You look at the Competition and Markets Authority announcement last week saying that, they've been investigating house builders, in terms of potential collusive activity, illegal activity. And they're now suggesting that the house builders could buy out the investigation for just £100 million. That is huge. And yet we've got the same thing in leasehold. We're talking about a multi-billion pound industry. Think of this as like tobacco, big oil. They are hiring lobbying firms. I'm not going to say which ones on this show now, but they're hiring lobbying firms to brief producers, journalists, people at APPGs, people in Parliament, people in government. They've got all the resources, and where they've got the edges in the courts. We were thrown out. We managed at the last minute to muster support from Michael Gove, can you believe? Lord Gove, he felt so strongly about this. He thought, no, I've got to defend this legislation. I'm responsible. I need to go for it. We assembled a huge coalition of leaseholder groups, some going back to the 1970s. And even then, this week, it goes right through to Friday, 7 freeholders and the government. So it's all resting on the government. And that's really not a good place to be. I think that's the worry, that they're going to be taken in by the legal establishment beyond this judicial review. I think that's always been the issue. All these governments, Harold Wilson, Margaret Thatcher, John Major, Tony Blair famously, they all said that they want to get rid of the system. And then a lot of lobbying happens and a lot of people say, oh, it's complicated. And then it doesn't happen. And I think that's the really key thing. If Labour don't do this, other parties in this very volatile political scene will take a march.
Thank you, Harry. Always good to talk to you. Harry Scoffin is housing campaigner and founder of Free Leaseholders. I imagine we'll be speaking again with Harry after we find out what happens later on this week.